Hello, and welcome to this quiet journey through one of the most beautiful love stories of our time. Tonight, we're going to explore the wedding of Prince William and Catherine Middleton, not as a grand spectacle, but as an intimate story of two people navigating one of the most important days of their lives. Before we start, could I please ask you to hit the subscribe button and give me a thumbs up or a like if you like the videos I am making for you. It really helps me to know if what I am making is the right thing for you. I hope you're enjoying these intriguing royal sleep stories wherever you are in the world and you find them relaxing. Why not leave a comment and tell me where you are and what time it is there? Now, let's get comfortable. Pull your blankets close. Let your breathing slow and deepen. There's no need to stay awake for every word. This story will be here, flowing gently like a stream. Whether you're listening closely or drifting peacefully away, some of you will hear the whole tale. Others will slip into dreams partway through. Both are exactly right. As we settle in together, imagine for a moment the quiet before dawn on the 29th of April, 2011. London is still mostly sleeping, but already, in the darkness, something extraordinary is beginning to unfold. Chapter 1. The Quiet Before the Storm. In the months leading up to that spring morning, two young people were preparing for a day that would change their lives forever. But let's begin not with the wedding itself, but with the careful, thoughtful months that came before. When Prince William and Catherine Middleton announced their engagement, they could not have known precisely what lay ahead, but they understood even then that their wedding would need to be many things at once. It would need to be a personal celebration, an intimate joining of two hearts. It would also need to be a national event, a moment for a country to pause and celebrate. And it would need to be a global spectacle, broadcast to billions of people around the world who would never meet them, but who would watch every moment unfold. 7 months. That was the span of time between the announcement of their engagement and the wedding day itself. 7 months might seem like a long engagement by some standards, but for William and Catherine, as they would later reflect, it was absolutely crucial. Those 7 months gave them time to rehearse, time to walk through the ancient spaces of Westminster Abbey, learning every step they would take, time to understand the choreography of a day that would be watched so closely. During those early planning meetings, something unexpected happened. William was presented with an official guest list, the kind of list that royal protocol demands. It contained around 777 people. He looked at the names carefully, running his eyes down page after page, and realized something startling. He personally knew almost none of them. These were people suggested by tradition, by protocol, by the needs of diplomacy and state. But they were not his friends. They were not Catherine's friends. They were not the people who had shared their lives, their laughter, their private moments. This troubled William deeply. He thought about what this wedding was supposed to be, what it was supposed to mean. And so he did something rather bold. He appealed directly to his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, a woman who understood perhaps better than anyone the weight of royal duty and the pull of the heart. The Queen's response was both surprising and wonderfully human. She reportedly told him to get rid of the list and start from his friends. Start with the people who mattered. Build outward from love, not inward from obligation. It was permission, freely given, to make this day truly theirs. And so, the list changed. It became something more personal, more real. Yes, there would still be dignitaries and representatives from around the world. The wedding was, after all, a significant state occasion, But at its heart, it would be surrounded by friendly faces, by people who genuinely cared about William and Catherine as individuals, not as symbols. As the wedding day approached, another crucial decision was made. Despite the fact that more than 2,000 people would eventually fill Westminster Abbey, their actual wedding parties would be deliberately tiny. Think about that for a moment. 2,000 guests in one of the most magnificent churches in the world, television cameras capturing every angle, and yet William and Catherine chose to keep their immediate circle small. This wasn't an accident or an oversight. It was an intentional choice, a way of creating a buffer, a sense of intimacy within the vastness. That small inner circle, that handful of closest friends and family standing with them, was meant to transform the service. It was meant to make what could have been an overwhelming performance feel instead like a family event, like something precious and protected. When you have just a few beloved faces near you, the thousands beyond them fade slightly. You can focus, you can breathe, you can remember why you're really there. In those final weeks before the wedding, as April stretched toward its end, the couple met frequently with those who would help choreograph the day. Charles and Camilla, William's father and stepmother, hosted small dinners where every detail was discussed, debated, considered. These were not grand formal planning sessions. They were intimate gatherings around a table where family could speak freely. At these meals, practical questions arose. Should there be trumpets inside the abbey? How would the music transition between different parts of the service? What would feel right, and what would feel like too much? Every choice mattered because every choice would be magnified 1,000,000 times over through cameras and commentary. At one of these dinners, Camilla pulled Catherine aside. She had travelled her own difficult path to a royal wedding, facing scrutiny and judgment that Catherine could perhaps only imagine. But she had survived it, and more than survived. She had found her place, her equilibrium. Now, with Catherine facing her own moment in that relentless spotlight, Camilla offered a single piece of advice. We don't know exactly what those words were. The conversation was private, woman to woman, based on lived experience. But we can imagine it was something about staying grounded, about remembering who you are beneath the titles and the expectations, about finding moments of peace even in the storm of attention. Catherine carried that advice with her as the final preparations intensified. She made a decision that surprised some people, but made perfect sense for who she was. Despite the scale of the event, despite knowing that her face would be examined in minute detail by billions of people, Catherine chose to do her own makeup on her wedding day. This wasn't vanity or foolishness. She had prepared carefully, taking private lessons to ensure she understood exactly how makeup would photograph, how it would look in the Abbey's lighting, how it would last through hours of emotion and ceremony. But in the end, she wanted her hands, her choices, her familiar routine. She wanted to look in the mirror and see herself, not someone else's interpretation of a bride. This extended to other choices as well. Her veil, for instance, was designed with great thought. It was kept relatively short and sheer, not the dramatic, opaque veils that some royal brides had chosen. Why? So viewers could always see her expressions, so her face would never be hidden, so that when she smiled or looked nervous or felt joy, the world could share those genuine moments with her. Even behind a veil, Catherine wanted to be visible, to be real. As these plans solidified, another enormous task was underway: the transformation of Westminster Abbey itself. This ancient church, which has stood for nearly 1,000 years, which has witnessed coronations and funerals and countless royal weddings, needed to become something new for this one day. It needed to become an English country garden. The decision to fill the abbey with greenery was both aesthetic and symbolic. England in spring is alive with growth, with fresh leaves and blossoms. To bring that living beauty inside the Gothic stone was to marry the ancient with the natural, the formal with the organic. And so, over the course of several days, a team of florists and designers worked to install 4 tons of live foliage throughout the abbey's interior. Imagine the scope of that work. 4 tons, the weight of 2 cars, but instead of metal and glass, this was leaves and branches, flowers and moss. The scent alone must have been remarkable, replacing the usual mustiness of old stone with something green and alive. 6 tall trees were brought in to line the nave, creating a verdant avenue toward the altar. These weren't small decorative trees. They were substantial, real trees, their roots still intact, standing in the spaces between the ancient pillars. As guests would walk down that central aisle, they would pass beneath these living sentinels, feeling almost as if they were walking through a forest path rather than a formal church. And here's a detail that speaks to the values William and Catherine wanted to embody. After the wedding, those trees were not discarded. They were carefully removed and replanted. It was a quiet nod to sustainability, to the idea that even in celebration, we can be mindful of our impact on the world. Those trees are growing somewhere still, perhaps in royal gardens, carrying with them the memory of that extraordinary day. Every detail of the abbey's layout was considered with care. Catherine's walk to the altar, for instance, would cover about 97 meters. 97 meters might not sound like much. It's less than the length of a football field. But when you're walking it alone, with the eyes of the world upon you, when every step is being filmed and photographed and analyzed, it becomes an epic journey. That path was carefully plotted, not just for its length, but for what it would pass. Near the entrance to the abbey lies the grave of the unknown warrior, a memorial to an unidentified British soldier killed on the Western Front during World War I. His grave represents all those who died in war without being identified. Royal brides, by tradition, do not walk directly over this grave. It's a gesture of respect, a moment of acknowledgement even in the midst of celebration. Catherine's route was planned to curve gently around it, honoring that tradition while maintaining the flow of her entrance. Even Catherine's veil was designed with the abbey itself in mind. It was cut to echo the shape of the abbey's great west door arch, that magnificent portal through which she would enter. This wasn't immediately obvious to viewers watching from home, but for those standing in the abbey, the visual harmony between the architecture and the bride's attire created a sense of unity, of belonging. She was not just walking into a building. She was, in some symbolic sense, walking into history itself, and her appearance had been shaped to honor that history. The dress itself, designed by Sarah Burton for Alexander McQueen, carried its own layers of meaning. The lace that adorned the gown was carefully chosen to symbolize all 4 nations of the United Kingdom: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. This wasn't just decoration. It was a statement that Catherine was marrying into a role that would connect her to people across the entire kingdom, not just one corner of it. But the dress was also an engineering marvel. The skirt was constructed in such a way that it would open like a flower as Catherine walked, creating movement that would be beautiful on camera. Think about that level of detail. The designers weren't just thinking about how the dress would look when Catherine was standing still. They were thinking about fluid dynamics, about how fabric would behave with each step, about how that movement would translate through television screens into homes around the world. Catherine's wedding ring carried its own story. It was made from Welsh gold, a tradition for royal brides. But this wasn't newly mined gold. It came from a stock that the royal family had held since 1923, a supply carefully preserved for nearly 90 years. When Catherine slipped that ring onto her finger, she was literally wearing a piece of history, gold that had waited decades to fulfill its purpose. Interestingly, William chose not to wear a wedding ring at all. This raised some eyebrows at the time, but it was entirely his personal choice. Some men simply don't wear rings, whether for comfort, for practical reasons, or simply because it doesn't feel right to them. William was one of those men, and he didn't let tradition or expectation change that. Catherine understood and supported his decision. After all, a ring is a symbol, but the commitment it represents exists with or without it. As the wedding day drew closer, the couple worked on the ceremony itself, not just the pageantry around it. They wanted their wedding service to reflect who they were as people, not just as public figures. So they made choices that were meaningful to them personally. They wrote their own short prayer, asking for help in being generous with love and time. This is such a simple, beautiful thing, generosity. Not wealth, not power, not fame, but the capacity to give freely of yourself to another person, to your family, to the world. Time, especially, is our most precious resource. We can't create more of it. We can only choose how to spend it. By asking for help in being generous with time, William and Catherine were acknowledging that their lives would be pulled in 1,000 directions, that demands would constantly press in on them. They were asking for the strength to prioritize what mattered. They also chose the Bible translation for the ceremony's reading with care. They selected a modern, gender-inclusive translation. This might seem like a small detail, but it mattered. Language shapes how we think. When Scripture is read with language that includes all people equally, it sends a message about values, about what kind of world we want to build. But for all this careful planning, for all the rehearsals and walkthroughs and detailed timelines, William and Catherine both knew that on the day itself, something else would be required. The couple were given what was described as a detailed, almost military-style timetable for April 29th. Every minute was accounted for, every movement planned. But William later said something revealing. He said they tried to focus not on the global audience, not on the cameras or the protocol or the timetable, but on getting through each stage together. Together. That's the word that mattered. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, together. As long as they could hold on to each other, as long as they could keep their focus on their partnership rather than the performance, they could survive the day and even find joy in it. But surviving the day meant first surviving the night before. Chapter 2. The Longest Night. The 28th of April, 2011, slipped into evening. The sun set over London, and the city began to settle. But not everyone was sleeping, not by a long measure. Outside Clarence House, where Prince William was spending his final night as a single man, crowds had begun to gather. These weren't small crowds. These were throngs of people, hundreds and then thousands, who had come to be part of history, to claim their spot along the wedding route, to sleep on the pavement if necessary, just to ensure they'd have a good view come morning. And they were in high spirits. How could they not be? A royal wedding is a rare thing, a moment of celebration in a world that often feels too heavy with trouble. So these people, these devoted royalists and curious tourists, and romantic souls. They cheered, they sang, they called out well wishes to anyone who might hear them inside the grand building. Inside Clarence House, Prince William lay in his bed, trying to sleep. The cheering filtered through the windows, muffled but persistent. He could hear individual voices sometimes, shouts of encouragement, bursts of laughter. He tried to rest. He knew he needed rest. Tomorrow would be long and demanding and emotionally overwhelming. But sleep, that most basic human need, eluded him. Later, William would admit the truth. He slept for only about 30 minutes that night. 30 minutes out of 8 or 10, or however many hours he lay there in the darkness, listening to the celebration outside, thinking about what dawn would bring. Can you imagine? 30 minutes of sleep before arguably the most important day of your life. A day when you need to be present and alert and emotionally available for hours of public performance. But perhaps, in a strange way, it was fitting. How many people sleep well the night before their wedding? Even without the crowds, even without the cameras and the global audience. A wedding is a threshold moment. You're stepping from one version of your life into another. Your mind races. Your heart pounds. You review everything that could go wrong and everything you hope will go right. You think about the person you're about to marry and what forever really means. Sleep, in such circumstances, is often an impossible dream. So William lay there in the darkness, awake and thinking and waiting for dawn. We can only guess at his thoughts. Was he nervous? Almost certainly. Was he excited? Of course. Was he questioning his decision? Probably not. By all accounts, William had no doubt about Catherine. She was the one, and he knew it with the kind of certainty that needs no questioning. But knowing you're doing the right thing doesn't make the doing of it any less intimidating. As dawn finally broke on April 29th, as the first light touched the rooftops of London, William rose from his bed, tired but determined. The day had begun, and there was no turning back now. Elsewhere in London, Catherine was waking too. We know less about her night, about whether she slept better than William or tossed and turned in equal measure. But we know that when she woke, she began the process of becoming a bride. She had decisions to make about her appearance, and she'd already made the most important one. She would do her own makeup. In the quiet of her room, with the lessons she'd taken guiding her hands, Catherine carefully applied foundation, blush, eyeshadow, mascara. She worked slowly, methodically. This wasn't a moment to rush. Each brushstroke was an act of preparation, of transformation, but also of remaining grounded in herself. There's something intimate and powerful about a bride doing her own makeup. It's a moment alone with yourself, a moment to look in the mirror and see both who you've been and who you're about to become. Catherine wanted that moment. She needed it. Outside London was fully awake now and pulsing with excitement. The streets along the route from Westminster Abbey to Buckingham Palace were lined 10, 20 people deep. Union Jack flags fluttered in the spring breeze. People had camped out all night, and now they were eating packed breakfasts, chatting with neighbours they'd just met, sharing the anticipation. The procession route was precisely 1.3 miles long, carefully chosen and tightly secured. In the days around the wedding, police had used preemptive tactics to ensure safety. Officers were positioned at every corner, on every rooftop. This wasn't paranoia, it was prudence. Large public gatherings require careful management, and a royal wedding, with its symbolism and spectacle, required the highest level of attention. But security was designed to be invisible to the casual observer. The goal was celebration, not intimidation. The officers were there, watchful but not obtrusive, allowing the joy of the day to flow freely while standing ready for any eventuality. Back at the Abbey, preparations were reaching their final stages. The 4 tons of foliage were in place, perfuming the air with the scent of fresh greenery. The 6 tall trees stood like silent witnesses along the nave. The seats, more than 2,000 of them, were ready for guests. Though here's an interesting detail. Seating inside the Abbey was organized by section, not by exact seat assignment. This might seem like a minor point, but it reflects that same philosophy that had guided so many of the couple's choices. By not assigning specific seats within each section, the atmosphere became slightly less rigid, less formal. Guests could choose where to sit within their area, could sit next to friends or family, rather than being locked into a predetermined configuration. It was a small gesture toward warmth and flexibility in what could otherwise feel like a very stiff, formal occasion. The guests began to arrive, dressed in their finest. Women in elaborate hats, men in morning suits, dignitaries from around the world, prime ministers and presidents and princes, but also William and Catherine's friends, their schoolmates, their university colleagues, people who had seen them as young people figuring out their lives, not as symbols or celebrities. David and Victoria Beckham arrived, adding a touch of modern celebrity glamour to the traditional royal occasion. Elton John, who had sung at Princess Diana's funeral, was there to witness her son's wedding. The guest list truly was an interesting mix of old and new, tradition and contemporary culture. As the Abbey filled, as the organ began to play softly, as the anticipation built to an almost unbearable pitch, Prince William arrived with his brother Harry at his side. Harry, the best man, the keeper of the rings, the support system. William would need his brother today more than perhaps any other day of his life. And here's a charming detail. Prince Harry arrived carrying something unexpected. A pink, fuzzy worm toy. This wasn't for himself, of course. It was for one of the bridesmaids, little Eliza Lopes, Camilla's granddaughter. Harry knew that the day would be long and potentially boring for a small child, and he'd thought ahead, bringing a small comfort, a toy to play with during the duller moments. It's the kind of thoughtful gesture that reveals character, the ability to think beyond the grand spectacle to the individual experience of a child who just wants something to hold. The bridesmaids and page boys, all children, were adorable in their formal attire. But being adorable doesn't mean being perfectly behaved, and everyone involved understood that. Children are unpredictable. They get tired. They get cranky. They cover their ears when things get too loud, as little Grace Van Cutsem would famously do later on the Buckingham Palace balcony, creating one of the day's most endearing images. Managing these children fell largely to Pippa Middleton, Catherine's sister and maid of honor. Pippa would later be dubbed, quite accurately, as the hardest working person in the Abbey that day. While everyone else could simply sit and watch or participate in their one designated moment, Pippa had to constantly be aware of the children, where they were, what they were doing, whether they needed help or encouragement or distraction. She did this job with such grace and efficiency that she became almost as famous as the bride herself that day, though for entirely practical rather than glamorous reasons. The Abbey was nearly full now. The organ music swelled. William stood at the altar, looking back toward the great west doors, waiting. He was nervous. You could see it in the set of his shoulders, in the way he shifted his weight ever so slightly from foot to foot. But he was ready, as ready as he could be. And then, announced by a fanfare that sent shivers down spines, Catherine arrived. Chapter 3. The Walk. The great west doors of Westminster Abbey opened, and Catherine stood there framed by Gothic stone and spring light. For a moment, perhaps just a heartbeat, everything stopped. 2,000 people in the Abbey caught their breath. Millions watching around the world leaned forward. She was, in that moment, both utterly herself and completely transformed. The dress, that remarkable Sarah Burton creation, gleamed softly in the Abbey's light. The veil, cut to echo the arch of the door behind her, floated gently. Her makeup, applied by her own hands, was perfect. Natural enough to look like her, polished enough to photograph beautifully. Michael Middleton, Catherine's father, stood beside her. What must have been going through his mind? His daughter, his little girl, now grown and about to marry a prince in one of the most watched ceremonies in history. The pride must have been almost overwhelming, tinged perhaps with a father's natural sadness at letting go, at stepping back to let his daughter step forward into a new life. Catherine's bouquet included a sprig of myrtle, grown from the same bush that supplied Queen Victoria's bouquet in 1840. Again, that connection to history, that sense of continuity across generations. And then they began to walk, 97 meters, the distance from the great west door to the altar where William waited. It doesn't sound like much when you say it quickly, 97 meters, but measured in heartbeats, in breaths, in steps taken while the world watches, it becomes infinite. Catherine and her father moved slowly, deliberately. The dress performed as designed, the skirt opening like a flower with each step, creating beautiful, flowing movement that the cameras captured and transmitted around the globe. Behind her, Pippa held the train, managing its length with practiced precision, while simultaneously keeping an eye on the young bridesmaids and page boys. As they progressed down the nave, passing between those 6 tall trees, the scent of the foliage would have surrounded them. It must have been somewhat surreal, this most formal of occasions softened by the presence of so much living greenery, as if they were walking through a garden rather than a Gothic cathedral. They curved gently around the grave of the unknown warrior, honoring tradition, honoring those who had given everything in wars past. It was a brief moment of solemnity in the midst of celebration, a reminder that joy and memory, hope and history are always intertwined. William turned as Catherine approached. What did he see? His future, his partner, his love. Dressed magnificently, yes, but still fundamentally Catherine. The woman who had captured his heart years ago at university, who had waited patiently through his long deliberation about marriage, who had proven again and again that she could handle whatever life threw at them. Catherine's veil was sheer enough that he could see her expression clearly. She was nervous. How could she not be? But she was also smiling, and in that smile was everything they'd built together. Everything they hoped to build in the years ahead. Michael Middleton stepped back, his role in this part of the journey complete. Catherine stepped forward to stand beside William. They were together now at the altar, and the ceremony could begin. The service itself was traditional but personalized. The Archbishop of Canterbury spoke about marriage, about love, about commitment. The couple had chosen their readings carefully, and now those words filled the Abbey. That modern, gender-inclusive Bible translation spoke of love in terms that felt both timeless and contemporary. When it came time for the vows, William and Catherine spoke clearly, their voices carrying through the Abbey's ancient spaces. I, William Arthur Philip Louis, take thee, Catherine Elizabeth. I, Catherine Elizabeth, take thee, William Arthur Philip Louise. The traditional words, spoken by countless couples before them, but feeling, in this moment, utterly unique to them. The exchange of rings was simple and profound. Catherine's ring, that Welsh gold from 1923, slipped onto her finger. William's hand remained bare, but his commitment was no less complete for the absence of a visible symbol. They knelt for the blessing, and in that moment of kneeling together, they prayed that short prayer they had written. Grant that we may be generous with our love and time. The words were simple, direct, asking not for wealth or fame or power, but for the capacity to give, to be open-hearted, to prioritize what matters in a world that would constantly try to pull them in competing directions. And then they were declared married, husband and wife, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, Prince William and Princess Catherine. The names and titles would take some getting used to, but the fundamental truth was simple. They were married now, bound together by choice and by love. Inside the Abbey, the congregation burst into applause, even though applause is not traditionally part of an Anglican wedding service. But this was no ordinary wedding, and the joy could not be contained. The noise swelled, filling the ancient vaults, and Catherine and William smiled at each other, perhaps a bit surprised by the spontaneous outburst, but clearly moved by it. And here's something remarkable. Inside the Abbey, despite the stone walls and the sheer mass of the building, the couple could clearly hear the crowd outside reacting to key moments. When they were pronounced married, a roar went up from the streets that penetrated even into the Abbey's interior. Thousands upon thousands of voices cheering and celebrating. William and Catherine could hear that roar, could feel the energy of it, and it must have been both exhilarating and surreal to know that so many people, most of whom they would never meet, were invested in their happiness. After the service, before the processional out of the Abbey, there was a pause for the signing of the marriage registers. This is a legal requirement in British weddings. The marriage must be officially recorded. Interestingly, this was the only part of the entire ceremony that was not televised. The cameras cut away, the broadcast went to commentary, and for just a few minutes, William and Catherine had something approaching privacy. They went to a side chapel where the registers waited. The moment was witnessed by the Archbishop and by the official registrars, but it was not performed for a television audience. As they signed their names, making their marriage legally official, the congregation in the Abbey listened to music specially chosen for this purpose. Organ pieces filled the space, giving people something to focus on, something beautiful to hear while the formalities were completed. For William and Catherine, those few minutes must have been precious. A brief pause in the overwhelming flow of the day. A chance to look at each other without cameras focused on them. To perhaps exchange a quiet word or a private smile. They were truly married now, the paperwork done, the vows spoken, the promises made. When they emerged from the chapel and began their walk back down the nave, out of the Abbey and into their new life, something shifted in Catherine's demeanour. Several people noticed it. As they approached the great west doors, as she prepared to step back out into the sunlight and the crowd and the cameras, Catherine looked up at the west window, that magnificent stained glass that had looked down on centuries of ceremony. And she gave a brief smile, almost private, as if acknowledging something. Perhaps it was relief that the ceremony itself was over. Perhaps it was a moment of gratitude. Perhaps it was simply joy, pure and uncomplicated. As they walked, body language specialists would later note William's hand resting on Catherine's back. It was a small gesture, protective and supportive, barely visible in the wider shots, but clear in close-ups. His hand on her back, guiding her slightly, steadying her, being present with her. It's the kind of thing you do without thinking when you love someone, when you want them to feel your presence and support. They reached the doors and stepped out into the light. The crowd erupted. The noise was overwhelming, a wall of sound that rose up from thousands of throats. Flags waved. Cameras flashed. People were crying and laughing and cheering all at once. The couple paused at the top of the steps, taking in the scene. This was the moment when their private ceremony became truly public, when they transitioned from being two people making vows to being symbols of hope and continuity for an entire nation. They descended the steps toward the waiting carriage. A photographer with a keen eye noticed Catherine's hand shaking slightly during this transition. It was barely perceptible, the faintest tremor, but it was there. Despite the months of preparation, despite the rehearsals and the planning and the support, Catherine was human. She was nervous, she was overwhelmed, and her hand shook. But despite that nervousness, despite the enormity of the moment, Catherine would later say that her strongest memory of leaving the Abbey was something unexpected. It wasn't the crowd size or the noise or the cameras. It was the feeling of support. As they walked out together, as they faced that wall of celebration and attention, she felt supported. By William, yes, but also by something less tangible. The goodwill of the people, the collective hope and joy that surrounded them. It buoyed her, lifted her, helped her through what could have been a crushing moment of pressure. They reached the carriage, and here another detail carries meaning. The carriage they would ride in was the 1902 state landau, the same carriage that Charles and Diana had used for their wedding procession 30 years earlier. It was an open carriage, allowing the crowds to see them clearly, but also meaning they would be completely exposed to the elements and to the public gaze. William handed Catherine up into the carriage, and they settled into the red velvet seats. The driver gathered the reins. The horses, magnificent and perfectly trained, began to move, and the procession began. Chapter 4. The Procession. 1.3 miles. That was the distance from Westminster Abbey to Buckingham Palace via the processional route. 1.3 miles through the heart of London, through streets lined with more people than can easily be counted. The 1902 state landau rolled forward, its wheels crunching on the pavement, the horses' hooves creating a steady rhythm. William and Catherine sat side by side, visible to everyone, waving and smiling. The job of a royal in a procession is to acknowledge the people, to make eye contact, to help each person in the crowd feel seen and appreciated. It's exhausting in its own way, this constant presence, this need to project warmth and gratitude continuously. But it's also extraordinary to be part of such a moment, to see the happiness on people's faces, to understand that your union has become a source of joy for so many. That must create a feeling unlike anything else in human experience. The route had been tightly secured, every inch of it surveyed and planned. Police officers lined the streets, creating a human barrier between the procession and the crowd. But it wasn't an oppressive presence. The security was necessary, but it was also designed to be as unobtrusive as possible, to allow the celebration to feel free and spontaneous, even while being carefully managed. The crowds pressed forward, held back by barriers and by officers, straining to get a better view. Children sat on their parents' shoulders. People waved flags so vigorously they became blurs of red, white and blue. The noise was constant, a roar that followed the carriage like a wave. As they rode, William and Catherine would have had brief moments to speak to each other, comments lost in the noise but meaningful nonetheless. Perhaps they exchanged observations about the crowd or quiet words of support, or simply looked at each other with expressions that said everything without needing words. The procession moved through streets that carried their own histories, past buildings that had stood for centuries, through neighborhoods that had witnessed countless royal processions before this one. But each procession is unique, and this one belonged entirely to William and Catherine, to their story, to this particular spring day in 2011. The carriage continued its stately progress. The horses never faltered, trained for exactly this kind of work, accustomed to crowds and noise. The driver managed them expertly, keeping the pace even and dignified. And throughout it all, the couple waved. Catherine's hand moved in that distinctive royal wave, perfected through practice. Not too enthusiastic, not too restrained, just right for covering as much of the crowd as possible while appearing graceful. William waved too, more casual in his style, but equally committed to acknowledging the people who had come out to celebrate with them. The procession passed landmarks that any visitor to London would recognize, buildings whose names carry weight and history, streets that appear in 1,000 photographs and paintings. But today, these places were transformed by celebration, by the sheer density of human happiness concentrated in such a small area. As they approached Buckingham Palace, the crowd grew even denser, if that was possible. The gates of the palace were ahead now, and beyond them, the palace forecourt and the famous balcony that had been the site of so many iconic royal moments. At precisely 1:25 in the afternoon, the timing tightly managed despite the seeming spontaneity of the day, William and Catherine's carriage passed through the gates of Buckingham Palace. The noise of the crowd was suddenly partially muffled by the palace walls, and the couple could take a breath, relax their waving arms for a moment, prepare for the next act in this long day's drama. They descended from the carriage and entered the palace. Inside, away from cameras, they would have had a few moments to regroup, to perhaps have a sip of water, to stretch muscles held tense by the need to sit perfectly still and graceful during the carriage ride. But those moments were brief. The balcony awaited. The crowd outside was calling for them, chanting their names, wanting to see them, wanting that iconic moment that royal weddings always provide. The balcony kiss. The family gathered. Queen Elizabeth, Prince Philip, Prince Charles, Camilla, Prince Harry, Catherine's family, the bridesmaids and page boys, including little Grace Van Cutsum and Eliza Lopes, with her pink fuzzy worm toy tucked away somewhere safe. Together, they prepared to step out onto the balcony. The appearance was timed, but here's an interesting detail. It was not scripted. There was no explicit direction about what they should do, how long they should stay, whether they should kiss. The timing of when they would appear had been predetermined, but what happened once they stepped out was up to them. William took a breath and looked at Catherine. Without words, just through a glance, he checked that she was ready. This is the kind of nonverbal communication that develops between people who know each other deeply. He needed to know she was prepared for this next moment, and she needed him to check, to care about her readiness, rather than just forging ahead. She nodded, or smiled, or gave some signal that she was ready, and together they stepped out onto the balcony. Chapter 5. The balcony. The roar that greeted them was indescribable. If the noise during the procession had been impressive, this was something else entirely. This was the sound of 100,000 people or more gathered in front of Buckingham Palace and in the parks nearby. all seeing William and Catherine appear on the balcony and releasing their joy in one enormous collective shout. The couple stepped forward to the balcony's edge and waved. The family arranged themselves behind, some children clearly more interested in the spectacle than others. Little Grace Van Kootsum, overwhelmed by the noise, famously covered her ears, creating a photograph that would be shared millions of times, the picture of innocence amid overwhelming celebration. The crowd began to chant, "Kiss, kiss, kiss." The tradition of the balcony kiss at royal weddings was well established. Charles and Diana had kissed on the balcony. Millions of people were expecting it, anticipating it, calling for it. William and Catherine looked at each other. There's a wonderful moment caught on camera where William hesitates. This wasn't nervousness about kissing Catherine. They'd been together for years after all. But kissing in front of hundreds of thousands of people, knowing that the image would be broadcast around the world and analyzed and reprinted forever, that required a particular kind of courage. Catherine smiled at him, encouraging. The crowd continued to chant, and William leaned in. The first kiss was brief, almost chaste, a gentle touching of lips that satisfied the crowd's expectation while remaining dignified and appropriate for such a public setting. The crowd erupted in approval. Cheers and applause rolled across the palace forecourt like thunder. But then something spontaneous happened, something that showed these two were not just performing their roles, but were genuinely present in the moment. They kissed again. The second kiss was unscheduled, unrehearsed, entirely their choice. It was slightly longer, slightly more relaxed, as if they'd gotten over the initial awkwardness and decided to just be themselves. The crowd went even more wild at this second kiss. People laughed and cheered and threw their hands in the air. This was what they'd come for, not just the pageantry and the protocol, but the genuine affection, the real connection between two people who clearly loved each other. The balcony appearance lasted several minutes. The family waved. The children fidgeted adorably. And eventually, they retreated back into the palace, leaving the crowd still cheering, still celebrating, reluctant to disperse even though the main events of the public day were complete. Inside the palace, away from the cameras and the crowds, William and Catherine could finally breathe. The most intense, most public parts of their wedding day were behind them. They had done it, walked the walk, spoken the vows, acknowledged the crowds, kissed on the balcony. They had fulfilled every expectation while somehow maintaining their authenticity and grace. But the day was far from over. A wedding, even a royal wedding, includes private moments and celebrations beyond the public ceremony. And now, as the afternoon progressed, William and Catherine could begin to transition into those more intimate spaces. They slipped away, quietly, protected by the palace's privacy, to St. James's Palace for some downtime. This wasn't announced to the public. It wasn't part of the official schedule that newspapers had printed, but it was essential. After hours of being on, of performing their roles for the world, they needed time to simply be together, to process what had just happened, to rest before the evening celebrations. During this quiet interlude, removed from the scrutiny and the cameras, they could talk freely. They could laugh about moments from the ceremony or the procession. They could share their impressions and feelings. They could hold hands without anyone analyzing the body language. They could just be William and Catherine, two people who had just gotten married and needed a moment to let that reality sink in. When they emerged from this rest period, there was lunch waiting. Not a state banquet or an official reception, but something more personal. Queen Elizabeth hosted a lunch for close family and friends. The atmosphere was reportedly relaxed, celebratory but intimate. At some point during this lunch, William introduced Catherine with words that were both traditional and deeply personal. He called her, "My wife, Mrs. Wales." This was technically correct. As Prince William of Wales, his wife became Mrs. Wales in informal terms, though her official title was the Duchess of Cambridge. But there was something touching about the way he introduced her, using that simple, old-fashioned form of address that any husband might use, grounding their extraordinary circumstances in very ordinary, very human terminology. The lunch featured excellent food, as one might expect at Buckingham Palace, but there was also something whimsical and personal included. 2 wedding cakes had been commissioned. There was a traditional multi-tiered fruit cake, decorated magnificently, the kind of cake that royal weddings typically feature. But there was also a second cake, one that reflected William's personal taste, a chocolate biscuit cake. This is a very British confection, made with chocolate and crushed biscuits, rich and indulgent, and not particularly fancy. But it was William's favourite, and so it had a place of honour at his wedding lunch, right alongside the more formal creation. This detail speaks volumes about the kind of wedding William and Catherine wanted. Yes, tradition mattered, protocol mattered, but personal preference mattered too. If William loved chocolate biscuit cake, then his wedding would include chocolate biscuit cake, and no amount of formality would change that. As the afternoon stretched toward the evening, preparations began for the next phase of the celebration, the evening reception. This would be a more exclusive affair, limited to 200 close friends and family members. After the 2,000 guests at the Abbey and the hundreds at lunch, an evening with just 200 people must have felt almost intimate by comparison. Catherine changed into a second Sarah Burton gown for the evening. This one was different from the ceremony dress, less formal, designed for dancing and movement, with a cardigan-style top and flowing skirt. It was elegant, but more relaxed, appropriate for a party rather than a ceremony. The evening reception was hosted by Prince Charles at Buckingham Palace. The state rooms were decorated for celebration, with lighting and music, and an atmosphere that encouraged guests to relax and enjoy themselves. And enjoy themselves they did. At some point during the evening, Ellie Goulding took to a small stage or piano and performed Your Song, the classic Elton John ballad that William and Catherine had chosen for their first dance as a married couple. Goulding's ethereal voice filled the room as William and Catherine took to the dance floor, alone at first, performing that traditional first dance that marks the beginning of a marriage. They moved together gracefully, practiced enough to not step on each other's feet, but not so polished as to seem artificial. This was their dance, their song, their moment. The gathered friends and family watched, many with tears in their eyes, as these 2 young people they cared about so much began their married life. After the first dance, others joined them on the floor. The music continued, and as the night went on, the playlist evolved. It started with romantic ballads and classic love songs, but as inhibitions lowered and energy increased, the music became more upbeat, more contemporary, more designed to get people moving. Guests who attended later reported that the couple stayed on the dance floor for most of the night. This wasn't just a symbolic appearance, a few dances for show before retiring. William and Catherine genuinely loved to dance, and this was their party. They were going to enjoy it. They moved through the crowd, dancing with each other, dancing with friends, laughing and clearly having the time of their lives. The formality of the day had given way to celebration. The weight of protocol had lifted. This was no longer a state occasion, but a wedding party, and they were determined to celebrate properly. Chapter 6. Into the night. As midnight approached and then passed, as the party at Buckingham Palace began to wind down, a smaller group of the closest friends and family prepared for one more celebration. A truly private late-night party at the Goring Hotel. The Goring Hotel holds a special place in the story of this wedding. It's where Catherine and her family stayed the night before the ceremony. A luxurious but relatively understated hotel near Buckingham Palace. Now it would host the final act of this extraordinary day. The theme for this late-night gathering was Basil's Bar, a reference to a famous beach bar in Mustique, the Caribbean island where the royal family sometimes vacations. The implication was clear. This was to be a fun, tropical-themed party, the kind of casual, loose celebration you might have on a beach after a few cocktails. Not the kind of thing anyone associates with royal protocol. The decorations apparently included palm fronds and tropical flowers, bright colors and casual seating. The music was probably reggae or calypso or other Caribbean-influenced sounds. The dress code relaxed even further. People changed into more casual clothes, shedding the formal attire that had defined the day. William and Catherine were at the center of it all, surrounded by their closest friends, the people who had known them longest and loved them best. These were the university friends who had seen them fall in love, the childhood companions who remembered them before the titles and the scrutiny, the siblings and cousins who understood what it meant to be part of this extraordinary family. In this intimate space, they could finally be completely themselves. No cameras, no official photographers, no watching world. Just friends and family and celebration and joy. The party was reportedly raucous in the best possible way. People danced and laughed and probably consumed a bit more champagne than was strictly wise. Stories were told, toasts were made, memories were created that this small group would carry with them for the rest of their lives. At some point in the night, we don't know exactly when because these details remain private, fireworks were set off. Not the massive public display that might accompany a state occasion, but something more personal, visible primarily to those at the party. The colours burst in the night sky above London, adding one more layer of magic to an already magical day. And then came the final touch, the perfect ending to this long, complex, beautiful day. William and Catherine were presented with a car for their departure, a small Fiat 500, decorated with balloons and perhaps streamers or other festive touches. This was Harry's doing, apparently, the best man's traditional role of decorating the couple's getaway vehicle taken to a wonderfully absurd extreme. The Fiat 500 is not a dignified car. It's tiny and cute and utterly impractical for most purposes. It's the opposite of the state landau or any other vehicle one might associate with royalty, and that's exactly why it was perfect. William and Catherine, probably laughing, climbed into this ridiculous balloon-covered car. William took the wheel. No driver for this final journey, just him and Catherine, and a tiny Italian car decorated like a birthday present. And then they drove, not away from London entirely, not to some distant honeymoon location. That would come later, but around the palace grounds, through the gates and back, a victory lap of sorts, a final wave to anyone still lingering outside, a last moment of celebration before the day officially ended. Can you imagine it? The future king and his bride, who hours earlier had ridden in a state carriage drawn by horses, now puttering around in a Fiat 500 covered in balloons, probably giggling like teenagers. The juxtaposition is delightful. It speaks to their ability to hold both the weight of their roles and the lightness of their humanity, to be both royal and real. Eventually, the car stopped. The balloons were probably removed. William and Catherine, exhausted and happy, made their way to wherever they would spend their first night as a married couple. The details of that are private, as they should be. But we can imagine them finally alone, finally able to reflect on everything that had happened, finally able to simply be husband and wife without any audience at all. Chapter 7. Reflections. In the days and weeks and months that followed, as the world continued to discuss and analyze every detail of the wedding, William and Catherine occasionally shared their own reflections on the day. One comment that William made stands out as particularly revealing. He called the wedding the beginning, not the highlight. This is such an important perspective, such a healthy way to approach marriage. Many people, royal or not, can fall into the trap of seeing their wedding day as the pinnacle of their relationship, the peak from which everything else is a gradual descent. But William was explicitly rejecting that framework. The wedding was the beginning. Beautiful, yes. Memorable, certainly. But not the highlight, because the highlight was meant to be the marriage itself, the decades they would spend together, the family they would build, the challenges they would face and overcome, the joys they would share. The wedding was a threshold, not a destination. Friends of the couple have said that this perspective, this understanding that the wedding was a beginning rather than an endpoint, shaped how they approached the entire day. It's part of why they made the choices they did, why they prioritized intimacy within the grandeur, why they insisted on having their friends around them, why they made sure to have moments of privacy and genuine celebration alongside the public performance. They were not performing their marriage, they were beginning their marriage, and there is a world of difference between those two things. As we think back over this long day, as we review the details and moments and choices that defined it, certain themes emerge: planning and spontaneity, public duty and private feeling, tradition and personal preference. All of these tensions were held in balance, navigated with grace and intention. Think about the 7 months of preparation, the rehearsals, the walkthroughs, the detailed timetable. All of that planning mattered. It allowed the day to flow smoothly, to hit its marks, to feel polished and professional. But planning alone would have made it sterile, would have turned it into a performance with no heart. So alongside the planning came choices that preserved spontaneity and authenticity. The unscripted balcony appearance, the second unplanned kiss, the hand resting on Catherine's back as they walked, Catherine's brief smile at the west window. These genuine moments, these spontaneous expressions of feeling, are what people remember most vividly. Think about the public duty, the 2,000 guests in the Abbey, the hundreds of thousands lining the streets, the billions watching worldwide. William and Catherine understood and accepted the public nature of their wedding. They didn't resist it or resent it. They understood that their marriage, by virtue of William's position, was a matter of public interest and even public importance. But they also insisted on private feeling, on making sure that beneath all the pageantry, they were actually getting married, actually making promises to each other that mattered personally, not just symbolically. The small wedding party, the written prayer, the downtime at St. James's Palace, the late-night party at the Goring. These were all ways of carving out space for genuine feeling within the vast public spectacle. And think about tradition versus personal preference. William and Catherine honoured tradition at every turn. The venue, the vows, the carriage, the balcony kiss, all of these were traditional elements that people expected and wanted to see, but they also made the day their own. Catherine doing her own makeup, the chocolate biscuit cake, the modern Bible translation, Harry's pink fuzzy worm toy, William's decision not to wear a ring. These personal touches didn't undermine the tradition, they humanized it. The wedding of William and Catherine was, in the end, many things at once. It was a fairy tale come to life, complete with princes and carriages and ancient cathedrals. It was a massive logistical undertaking, requiring coordination between dozens of organizations and thousands of people. It was a media event, broadcast to a global audience and analyzed in minute detail. But perhaps most importantly, it was a wedding. Two people who loved each other stood up in front of witnesses and promised to share their lives. They exchanged rings, or in William's case, chose not to. They were pronounced married. They kissed. They celebrated with friends and family. And then they drove off in a ridiculous little car covered in balloons to begin their life together. The scale was extraordinary, but the essence was universal. Every couple on their wedding day navigates some version of these same tensions. How to honor others while staying true to yourselves. How to make it special without losing sight of what's real. How to begin a marriage with intention and hope. William and Catherine, despite the unique pressures and opportunities of their position, were fundamentally engaged in that same human task. And by most accounts, they did it beautifully. Epilogue. The sound of bells. There's one more detail worth lingering over as we prepare to let this story rest. After the vows, after William and Catherine were pronounced married, the bells of Westminster Abbey began to ring. These weren't ordinary bells playing a simple tune. These were change ringers performing a peal, a complex mathematical sequence of notes where the bells never repeat the same sequence until the peal is complete. The peal that the Abbey's bells rang on William and Catherine's wedding day consisted of 5,040 changes, taking 3 full hours to complete. 3 hours. While William and Catherine processed from the Abbey, while they rode in the carriage through London streets, while they appeared on the balcony and retreated into the palace for their private moments and their lunch, the bells continued to ring. While they rested and changed and prepared for the evening reception, the bells were still ringing. Those bells were witness to an accompaniment for a significant portion of this long day. Change ringing is a peculiarly English art form, demanding incredible concentration and teamwork. The ringers must maintain their patterns for hours, never making an error, because a single mistake ruins the mathematical purity of the peal. It's a beautiful metaphor, in a way, for marriage itself. A pattern undertaken together, requiring sustained attention and cooperation, creating something beautiful through combined effort. So as we imagine William and Catherine moving through their wedding day, we can imagine those bells in the background. Constant, complex, beautiful. Marking time, celebrating, calling out across London to anyone who would listen that something significant had happened here, that 2 lives had been joined, that a promise had been made. Eventually, after those 3 full hours, the final change was rung. The bells fell silent. The ringers descended from the bell tower, their work complete. But the marriage they had celebrated continued. It continues still. And so we come to the end of our story, though of course, it is not truly an ending. William and Catherine's story continues. They have had children now, 3 of them, who will grow up in the spotlight, just as William did. They have faced challenges and tragedies, including the death of William's grandmother, the Queen he appealed to for permission to invite his friends to his wedding. They have taken on more responsibilities, more duties, more of the weight that comes with their position. But on April 29th, 2011, they were simply a couple getting married, nervous and excited, overwhelmed but determined, supported by friends and family and by the goodwill of millions of people they would never meet. They walked 97 meters together down a nave lined with trees. They spoke vows that echoed through Gothic stone. They kissed on a balcony while the world watched and cheered. They danced until late into the night, and they drove away in a balloon-covered car, laughing into their future. It was a beginning, and what a beautiful beginning it was. If you're still awake, listening to these final words, thank you for taking this journey with us. If you've drifted into sleep somewhere along the way, may your dreams be peaceful and full of the kind of hope and joy that a wedding, any wedding, but especially this one, can inspire. Rest well, dream softly, and remember that the best stories, the ones worth telling in the quiet hours of the night, are stories about love and commitment and two people choosing to build a life together, no matter how extraordinary or ordinary the circumstances. Good night. The bells have fallen silent now. The crowds have dispersed, returning to their homes with memories and photographs, with stories to tell their children and grandchildren. The streets of London are quiet again, though they will never forget the day they witnessed. Inside Buckingham Palace, the lights are dimming. The decorations will be taken down tomorrow, the flowers distributed to hospitals and hospices, the trees replanted in royal gardens. Everything that was assembled for this one day will be carefully disassembled, archived, remembered. But the marriage continues, behind closed doors, away from cameras. William and Catherine are simply husband and wife now. They will wake up tomorrow and begin their life together in earnest. There will be a honeymoon soon, a chance to escape the attention and simply be together. But for now, they rest, exhausted and happy, having navigated one of the most challenging and beautiful days of their lives. In living rooms and pubs and public squares around the world, people are still talking about what they witnessed. They're sharing their favorite moments, debating the details of the dress, remarking on the beauty of the ceremony. Some are crying happy tears, some are raising toasts. All are connected for this brief moment by having witnessed something significant together. There is something profound about a shared experience on this scale. In a world that often feels fractured and divided, where people are separated by geography and politics and countless other differences, a moment like this creates connection. For one day, millions of people were thinking about the same thing, feeling variations on the same emotions, participating in the same story. And at the center of it all were two people who somehow remained themselves despite the enormity of the attention. Two people who managed to be both royal and real, both ceremonial and genuine. Two people who understood that the wedding was not the goal, but the beginning. As the night deepens, as London settles into sleep, as the last of the celebration fades into quiet, we can imagine William and Catherine finally alone, finally still, finally able to let the full reality of the day wash over them. They did it. They made it through, together. And tomorrow, the real work begins. The work of building a marriage, a partnership, a life. But that's a story for another time. A story that's still being written, day by day, choice by choice, moment by moment. For now, there is only this, the end of a long day, the beginning of a life together, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that despite everything, they managed to hold on to what mattered most, each other. The story has been told. The details have been shared. The 50 facts have been woven into a narrative that spans from the 7 months of preparation through the 3 hours of bells and beyond. If you're still here, still listening, perhaps you're thinking about your own significant moments, your own thresholds crossed, your own beginnings. We all have them. Days when our lives changed direction, when we made promises, when we stood up in front of others and declared our intentions. William and Catherine's wedding was extraordinary in scale, but universal in essence. We can see ourselves in their story because, at its heart, it's a human story. It's about love and nervousness and hope and celebration. It's about trying to honor tradition while being authentic. It's about bringing people together to witness and support a commitment. Whether you're married or single, young or old, from London or from somewhere on the other side of the world, there is something in this story that resonates, because we all understand what it means to want to share your life with someone. We all know the mixture of excitement and fear that comes with major life transitions. We all have experienced in one form or another the need to be both public and private, to perform while remaining real. So as this long telling comes finally to its close, as the night deepens around you wherever you are, take with you this: the image of 2 people walking together hand in hand through a day of overwhelming beauty and pressure, never losing sight of each other, never forgetting what mattered most. The walk down the nave, the vows spoken clearly, the hand on the back, the balcony kiss, the balloon-covered car. These are the moments we remember. These are the details that humanize the spectacle, that remind us that beneath the crown and the cameras are people with beating hearts and nervous hands and genuine hopes for their future. May you sleep peacefully tonight, carrying with you the memory of a beautiful beginning. May your own beginnings, past or future, be blessed with half the grace and joy that William and Catherine managed to find on their wedding day. The story is told. The bells have fallen silent. The day is done. Rest now.